Good afternoon. The President of the General Assembly will speak first, and then Mr. Banbury and Dr. Nabarro. Mr. President.
Thank you. Greetings to you all. The member states of the United Nations have just been briefed on the latest developments regarding the Ebola crisis. I thank all those who participated in this meeting, including Madame Suzanne Marokora, Secretary General's Chief Cabinet, and the officials who briefed the Assembly from Monrovia and Freetown. Two distinguished senior officials are here with me today. Mr. Anthony Banbury, Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of the United Nations Mission for Emergency Ebola Response, and Dr. David Nabarro, Envoy of the Secretary General on Ebola. On behalf of the United Nations, I want to thank the governments and people of the affected countries and to express my solidarity to them, to the local workers and caregivers for their remarkable efforts. Let me also reiterate my deep appreciation to Mr. Banbury and Dr. Nabarro, as well as the hundreds of UN staff and international workers who are on the front line. The international community must sustain our efforts to avoid stigmatization and give great focus on the recovery from this epidemic, as the outbreak has impacted all facets of everyday life in the affected countries. Now is not the time to become complacent. We must stay vigilant and committed to stopping this scourge. We cannot afford to take our eyes off this crisis and must remain focused until the job is done. In this regard, it is my intention to convene regular briefings on this matter. Mr. Banbury, here is the microphone. I would like you to address members of the press.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to express my deep appreciation for the leadership shown by the President of the General Assembly, not just in convening the meeting today, but in convening the Assembly immediately after he took office and shepherding through the passage of Resolution 69-1 that brought into life the UN mission that I now have the honor of leading. Ebola is an insidious and vicious disease menace. It kills people, it destroys families, it robs livelihoods, it ruins healthcare systems and education systems, deprives children of the ability to have an education. It has stretched the healthcare systems of the countries beyond the breaking point. It deprives governments of financial resources by reduced economic activity, just while it dries up the needs of governments to respond. And it has recently resulted in us passing the grim milestone of more than 5,000 officially confirmed people who have died of Ebola. At the same time, much progress is being achieved. We see significantly decreasing infection rates in key areas. That is a result of two things. It's the result of the communities themselves taking their lives, their way of life into their own hands, changing their behavior, protecting themselves, and they deserve great credit for their resilience. The other reason is because of the response, the national and international response. The Ebola treatment centers, the community care centers, the safe burials, the contact tracing, the training that is going on, social mobilization. These are all having an impact. And what this means is our strategy, the national plans, the UN strategy, the UNMEER operation is working. The problem is the disease has spread so much geographically. We will not defeat this virus by chasing it. We need to get ahead of it. And the way to do that is to have a much greater geographical dispersal of our interventions, the Ebola treatment units and the safe burial teams and all those interventions. And we need to have a much greater mobility, be able to respond quickly, move fast, get ahead of the virus. This is happening now thanks to the mobilization of international resources in support of the governments. We see more and more commitments of important capabilities, but we need to do more, and we need to do it faster. Otherwise, Ebola will continue not only to pose grave risk to the people of Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, but also of Mali, where we've seen a new transmission case, a new chain of transmission posing risk to the people of that country. And now there are risks to all the countries of that region and indeed the world until the last case of Ebola is snuffed out. The risks posed by Ebola are too great to do anything less than everything possible. It is the United Nations' intention to do everything we can to bring the crisis to an end as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Dr.
Nabarro.
Thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon. It really is great that the President of the General Assembly brought governments together with some partners to review progress in the last 6 weeks since we had our last discussions here. And I'd just like to express my personal and professional gratitude to the governments as well as to the many generous individuals who have put so much into the support for this enormous global response. It's only just begun. We've got a long way to go, but with all of your help and all of your support, we're going to get there and support the people and countries that have been affected by the virus to deal with the outbreak and to come back stronger so they're better able to address such challenges in the future, whatever they might be. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
We'll take a few questions. Yes.
Thank you very much. This is to Mr. Banbury and Dr. Nabarro. You've talked about the need for nimbleness, flexibility, and getting smaller teams out into rural areas and staff into these areas quickly. Can you tell us how many staff are needed? How many of these small treatment units are needed? How long is it going to take to get these rapid response teams going? And there have been stories that some of the large treatment units have lots of empty beds. Does this mean that they should sort of wrap them up or try and move parts of them out to rural areas? Thank you.
One of the greatest challenges we face from the very beginning is good information on exactly where the disease is, where it's spreading, who is it affecting, how is it being transmitted. UNMEER needs to be a knowledge-driven, information-driven operation so we can position ourselves and the scarce resources we have in a way that will provide the greatest and most rapid impact. We are doing that now with the partners under the national leadership. There are national plans in place that UNMEER and the UN system is supporting. Working very closely with the national governments. Those plans are adjusting based on the new information that we are getting when we now as we develop a better understanding of where the crisis is going, where the disease is going. We know we need to build more small centers. We know where we need to prioritize them. We know where we need to put diagnostic facilities, laboratories. We know where we need to allocate the scarce resources we have in each country. It's not just one country, what the crisis looks like in one country as compared to the other. Even within districts, from one district to another, the situation is very different. We have excellent teams on the ground working closely with the governments, but we do need more construction, we do need more specialized expertise to manage the facilities, and we need more money to fund it all. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. Thank you.
Excuse me, about the fund?
Thank you. Mr. Banbury, Dr. Nabarro, a question probably for both of you. From a medical and policy perspective, I'm sure you've both seen that Morocco has recently withdrawn as the host of the African Cup of Nations due to being held in January next year. More broadly, I'm sure you wouldn't want to specifically comment on Morocco specifically, but more broadly, what should countries do when they are expected to host these large events that would see an influx of people from affected countries?
Thank you very much indeed. We want to stress to everybody that the way to help the world address the global emergency of Ebola is to enable the countries affected by Ebola to get it under control. And that is our primary focus. The decisions made by individual countries in relation to who they admit and who they do not admit are sovereign decisions. However, the advice of the World Health Organization has always been that to ban travel from certain countries to other countries is not in keeping with best public health advice. Nevertheless, if countries wish to introduce certain kinds of restrictions, that is their choice. I think that's all we can say on this.
Sure, thanks a lot. Today, the International Monetary Fund said that they were changing their projection for getting the epidemic under control from the first quarter of 2015 to the second half of the year. And so I wanted to know, from your perspective in the field, does that consonant with your view of it? And there's this request by the U.S. that debt be forgiven to the three countries and attempts to raise money. Where does it stand in terms of actually, helping the countries get the resources that they need to combat the epidemic?
In terms of getting the crisis under control, for the United Nations, for all the responders, for the governments, the only real objective is 0 cases. That's what we have to do. We have to get to 0 cases left. That's going to take a while. But to bend the curve, to have reducing incidence of transmission, lowering infection rates, we need to get there much faster. The United Nations has a plan to achieve 70% of safe burials by December 1, 70% of new cases in isolation by December 1. If we do that, the rates of infection are going to be decreasing rather than increasing, and then we can focus the efforts on driving it down to 0. We're getting there. We're making, I think, very good progress given the challenges, but we don't know what's going to pop up tomorrow or the day after. As we have more and more deployments in the field, we're getting more and more information about chains of transmission in remote areas that we had not been aware of. So we have a very serious crisis on our hand. It is not under control now. We're working very hard to get it under control.
We'll take 2 slides. Questions? Yeah.
For Mr. Banbury, while you were addressing the Council, Chairman Ed Royce of the House Foreign Affairs Committee was raising questions about what he termed more or less the ineffectual and even counterproductive role of WHO in the early stages of the epidemic. Can you tell us what WHO is doing differently now?
The World Health Organization is an absolutely indispensable, vital part of the United Nations and global response to the epidemic. They're putting hundreds of people on the ground, epidemiologists, infection control specialists, trainers. They're integrated within the United Nations mission for Ebola emergency response. I think they're doing an excellent job. We will not solve this without them, and I'm very privileged and proud to work side by side with them.
Thank you. For Radio France International and El Mundo newspaper, the representative of Sierra Leone was talking that maybe at the end of November, early December, you will know results about the trials, about the new vaccines they are working on. Which are the details you have? When do you expect to have these vaccines there in the market to treat the people?
Thank you very much indeed. I think the situation with regard to anti-Ebola vaccines is rather promising, and at the moment there are I think the situation with regard to anti-Ebola vaccines is promising. There are phase 1 trials underway of 2 candidate vaccines, and provided these go well and that subsequent trials are successful, I am told there will be doses of vaccine available next year. And that is the situation that's being looked after on behalf of the international system by the World Health Organization, which will in turn help to ensure that the vaccines are available to those who need them as quickly as possible.
Would you like to add something, Excellency? The representative or permanent representative of Sierra Leone.
The presence of efforts, the ongoing efforts to develop a cure are well advanced. But of course, we are cautiously guarded about these comments we wish to make about those. But we hear that various companies in the UK, Japan, and China are also well advanced in trying to look for a cure or better testing to isolate, or at least identify the Ebola virus. and also ensure their better treatment. We are convinced that there will be positive news by the end of the year, and we are grateful to all those who have the biosecurity, biohazard, the clinical facilities, and also the research facilities, whether in the private sector or in their national capacity, to make this happen. We look forward to a cure, and we remain committed to the fight.
Very last question. Yeah.
Millions of dollars are coming in to help you defeat Ebola. What safeguards are being put in place to make sure that the money is spent well?
Yes, indeed. There are several revenue streams, and there have been concerns raised about how these monies will be used, how they'll be best deployed to those who are needed. And, of course, what we say to anybody who's concerned is that there will be a time for a proper audit of all our actions, individual, collective, regional, and national. And at this time, we are focused on the response. The UN has its own inbuilt safeguards. National governments who are contributing also have their own inbuilt safeguards, so make sure that the funds they contribute go to where they're supposed to go, whether it's institution-specific, country-specific, region-specific, or otherwise. We will work with everyone and realize that the world attention is focused on the 3 countries involved, and also focused particularly on Sierra Leone, and therefore we have the responsibility to use all funds received and reports wisely. Thank you.
Mr. Banbury or Mr. Nabarro also speak to that issue?
Yes, Mr. Banbury.
When the Secretary General established this mission, he made it clear that he wanted UNMEER to act decisively, rapidly, and get results, and not spend a lot of time mired in bureaucracy. And we are doing exactly as he charged us with. For instance, we are transferring assets from downsized peacekeeping missions, 4x4 vehicles, to the Ebola effort for healthcare workers, ambulances, etc. What we're able to do is have a much faster response, but we're documenting things very clearly. We're doing it in full transparency. Everything's going to be available for our own internal auditors. The big difference with this response compared to others is we're putting the bureaucracy and red tape behind us after the fact. We're acting, we're doing what's necessary to get at the crisis, but we're documenting it and making it available for ex post facto review. I think this is the way the United Nations should work more and more in order to serve the needs of the people who we're charged with serving. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Just to say that certainly every aspect of the funding that is coming in and being processed within the United Nations is being subject to the closest possible scrutiny with regard to how those monies are spent. I think that's all that I would like to say on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you.